In 2020, when COVID hit, it did a number on a lot of people. And for me specifically, I lost my life purpose. I lost my value. I lost my identity through that time. My mom died, and our relationship was at a bad spot because of me, because of my just suffering and intolerability. I looked in the mirror one night and I realized if something doesn't change, you're gonna be alone for the rest of your life. And I made a determination that night that I didn't want to be alone. I came on a Monday night for the first time by myself back in 2020 after my mom died, and that's when I began my real healing, the deep healing from when I was a child and all the trauma that happened. For me, the hurt was at 14 years old when I was abused by a youth pastor sexually. And that manifests itself in a way that it crushed my identity. It made me question my sexuality and made me fear being open with anybody, because what are they going to think of me? And ultimately what Celebrate Recovery did for me, it showed me that none of that matters, that my identity is in the fact that God created me, that He loves me, regardless of all of those things. And He's paved a way for an abundant life if I'm willing to put all those things aside and live in who He created me to be. The identity that He chose for me, not the identity that I chose for myself.
The things that Jeff and I were dealing with, not something I wanted to discuss with my family or even felt safe to talk about with our friends. So it was a place where I could come and I could share my hurt with this group of people who created a safe place for me to just let all of that out, let all of that go. And there's a beautiful process in bringing things out into the light. There's healing in that. There's healing in letting go of hurts that you've held on to for years and you've tried to pretend that they're not there. You find freedom, you find peace, you find joy again. And through that process, my relationship with Jesus grew even stronger.
There are definitely apprehensions to go into Celebrate Recovery. For whatever reason, it has sometimes gotten a negative stereotype. I'm not one of those people. I don't want to be one of those people. Well, for me, when my life was basically in shambles, I had to just admit to myself, you know what? You're one of those people. And one of those people is everybody. We all have hurts, we all have habits, we all have hang-ups. I mean, it just covers every type of hang-up that there is.
We have people who are there because they struggle with depression or anxiety. There are people who have lost someone and they just cannot get healing from the hurt. So I would say if you are considering Celebrate Recovery, just come try it. You can be as active or inactive as you want to be. So if you come to a small group and you don't want to say anything, you don't have to say a word. You can just sit there in small group and take it all in.
With Celebrate Recovery, I've come to enjoy the messiness of people's lives. And when things seem catastrophic or beyond repair, the Lord comes to those places and He turns what's completely a mess into something beautiful. And you get to watch that firsthand. You get to experience it. You get to see somebody completely busted and broken, and watch the Lord work in them and restore them to what His intention was for them.
Hello. Hello, Forever Family. I'm a believer in Jesus Christ who struggles with codependency. My name is Mary.
And I'm a believer in Jesus. Is that on? Is that on? No, it's not on. Well, it looks like it's on. Hang on. Oh, there we go. And I am a believer in Jesus Christ, and it was my struggles with drugs and alcohol that brought me here. My name is Mac. Hey, everybody. We want to share with you a little bit of our story tonight, and it starts in 1974. You see, that was the year that everything changed for us, at least for me. You know, I'd seen her walking down the halls at school, but she was out of my league. Best just put her out of my mind. It was the end of the school year anyway. I'd never see her again. My parents thought if they sent me to Christian summer camp, that would be the answer to straightening me out. But guess what? She was there. So I did what any brave, red-blooded American boy would do, and I asked her out the closing night of camp through somebody else. She actually said yes, but only if I would ask her myself. From that day forward, we became inseparable. We were together all the time. It'd been a great summer. She was a senior, I was a junior. Life was great. So I talked her into skipping school with me one day. Her mom was out of town. Her mom was in the hospital. Her dad was out of town. It was the perfect day. We could go to her house and just hang out. Neither one of us had ever had sex before, so there wasn't like any big plan. We were just hanging out in her bedroom listening to a little Led Zeppelin. I mean, what could go wrong, right? That's when it happened. Had we really just done that? We were shocked. It felt so right, but we couldn't do it again. It was wrong. All of our upbringing told us it was. We would do better. But that was a day that we wouldn't be able to forget, because 9 months later, August 17th, 1975, Mary was in the hospital.
Help, help me. My screams echoed around the bare walls of the hospital room. The last thing I remembered was somebody shoving a gas mask over my face. I thought they were suffocating me to punish me for what I had done. All I could think was, they're killing me. I'm dying. At 17 years old, this is the end of my life. I woke up thinking I was still having the baby, as the pain was unbearable. A nurse came into the room and said, "You need to quit hollering. You had the baby now. You need to be quiet." Well, what did I have? Did I have a boy or a girl? The hospital staff just walked in and out of my room, taking my vitals, showing no emotion. The only looks I've received were judging, critical looks. The kind that said, "How could you do something like this?" The kind that secretly whispered, "Shame on you, so sad." They treated me as if I were a ghost, which made me think the worst. Something happened to my baby. My baby didn't make it. I'm being punished for what I've done. I will live with this secret shame forever. But then God sent an angel to me, at least that's what I believe, in the form of a large black man dressed in white. He said to me with the kindest eyes, "I will find out what you had." He left and came back moments later and said, "You have a healthy, beautiful baby boy. Don't tell anybody I told you, though." And then he disappeared, and I never saw him again. I thank God for that man, or that he was an angel to me. Now I had to figure out how to get past placing my baby in adoption and simply move on with my life. However, God had another plan, and it was far better than Mac or I could ever imagine.
For us, life became one big party. It was a great way to put the past behind us. I mean, why think about the things we'd done in the past or worry about the future? It was easier just to numb the present. I was 18 years old. I could do anything that I wanted. And I would start by showing up to our wedding late and totally stoned. December 27th, 1976 was a blur. All I wanted to do was get my girl and split. We had things to do and places to be. Our house became the place to be. Everyone wanted to be a part of our home. Life was full of everything: romance, fun, adventure. We had it all, living in that 14 by 70 trailer. What more could we want? But always there in the background was that secret, the one we would never tell anyone or even talk about between ourselves.
4 years into our marriage, I started talking to Mac about having another baby. So I told Mac I was quitting the partying.
And I said, go ahead. I'm not. This is how you married me. This is how I'll be to the day I die.
I thought life would change once we had a baby to raise, and it did change. Mac's partying only got worse. This time during delivery, I was fully awake with family all around me. The moment I touched our curly-headed little girl, Cherry, for the first time, I knew this was a gift from God. That's when it hit me like a tsunami. We placed our firstborn baby in adoption, a baby just like this, a baby that was supposed to be her big brother. My body shook under the weight of the joy and immense pain. God gave Mac and me a blessing even when we didn't deserve it. That's the way he often works.
How did it happen? I'd become a slave to the very things that made me feel good. And my addiction told me, you can quit anytime you want. It's really no big deal. Set yourself a boundary. Just smoke pot and drink. Everybody knows there's nothing wrong with that. My addiction was patient, though. It waited for just the right moment when a friend would say to me, hey, let's stay up and party all night. I got just the thing. That's when the beginning of my train wreck of a life started with my affair with methamphetamines.
I had mastered the art of keeping family secrets. First, there was my mother's mental illness that nobody talked about. Then there was the secret baby. God, please take care of our son as he's growing up. And now I had the secret of Mac's drug addiction. So we went to church and pretended like our family was okay. Meanwhile, our family was disintegrating before my eyes. I tried to keep the rest of the world's eyes from seeing how broken we had become. God knew, however. God knew everything. The Bible verses my mother wrote all over the bathroom walls when I was a child were coming back to comfort me during the dark and lonely nights. I could hear her quoting Isaiah 41:10. Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be afraid, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand.
Even in the middle of my addictions, I still wanted to be involved in our girls' lives, but it was sporadic at best. Just like the textbook addict, everything I did had to be on a grandiose scale. Cherry, our oldest daughter, came home from school one day with an assignment. It was build a totem pole for history. So what do? What any sane person would do. I got my chainsaw and I said, let's go. We're going to cut down a tree and carve us a totem pole. And boy, did we. It had faces, beaks, wings, everything a totem pole would have. And then we painted it. It was spectacular. On the day it was due, we got there a little early and brought it in. And we were getting some pretty strange looks as we carried it down the hall. We were getting some strange looks because I noticed that all the other kids who had totem poles, theirs was made out of pencils and toilet paper rolls. Once again, I had been focusing on the project that people would see and give me another pat on the back instead of the relationships God had placed right in front of me. That all changed February 22nd, 1988. My world would come to a screeching halt. I had been awake for a week, and I came home that Sunday morning just wanting to sleep. I was so tired. Mary and the girls would be getting ready to go to church, and I would have the house all to myself. As I lay in bed pretending to be asleep, I didn't know that God was at work stirring in our little girl's heart. Callie, our 4-year-old daughter, was troubled. She said, Dad should be getting ready for church. Why is he still in bed? So she stood beside the bed and looked at me frustrated, little hands on her hips, and she said to her mom as she looked at me, how come Daddy doesn't go to church with us anymore? How come he doesn't do anything with us anymore? Mary, in her codependency, replied,
Leave your dad alone. He's been working really hard. He needs to rest. But Callie, stubborn and defiant, just like her dad, stood her ground and said, well, if he ain't going, then I ain't going either. Callie was determined not to leave, but I ordered her out of the bedroom and took her to the car.
The house got quiet, deathly quiet. All I could hear was that little girl wanting her father. See, God used that little girl in that moment to break my heart. I immediately got up and got all my drugs, paraphernalia, everything, and went outside and burned it all. I couldn't live the lie anymore. It was killing me, and I desperately wanted to live. That's when choice one was made. Reality set in, and I needed help. Even though I didn't know it, I made choice one and admitted that I was not God. I was powerless to control my tendency to do the wrong things, and that my life was unmanageable. In my limited and feeble way, I began an understanding that my hurts, my hang-ups, and my habits were not only killing me, but killing everybody that I claimed to love. For the first time in my life, I was ready to ask for help.
I was hanging on by a thread. That morning, the sermon was on confession and how good it is for the soul. All I ever wanted was our family to be like everyone else's family. Perfect, I thought. I tried to put on a good face and act like everything was perfect in my life. However, the last song of the day was "It Is Well With My Soul," and I couldn't hold back the tears. I thought of the man I'd left in our bed, a man I no longer knew, a shadow of the man I married. It wasn't well with his soul, and because of that, it wasn't well with mine either, and it certainly wasn't well with our daughters. Back home, God was finally waking up that totem pole man, breaking down his stubborn, strong-willed spirit. Max surrendered his life to God on that February morning, 1988, and he has never turned back.
Sure. Choice number two, getting help. After burning all my drugs, paraphernalia, and everything that had to do with drugs, I didn't know quite what to do, but now believe the Holy Spirit led me to write a letter to Mary outlining all the things I'd been doing and how much I wanted to change. And I finished that letter with, "Will you please help me?" Through her tears, she said, "Yes, I'll help you, but I think we need to get help. Would you talk to Ray?" Well, Ray was the pastor of our church, and he'd been coming to my cabinet shop for years, and he would get me to build stuff for him, stuff he actually didn't need. He was just trying to build a relationship with me because he saw something in me that was worthwhile instead of worth less. And guess what? It worked because I said, "Sure, I'll talk to Ray." So he came over that day, and he spent the Sunday afternoon with us, and he assured me that he would not only point me in the right direction, but he thought that our church family would too, if I just asked for their help. Ray became one of my greatest mentors. Well, I went to church that Sunday night, and Mary and I both did, because I didn't know where else to get help. And I went before the congregation, and I told them that I was a drug addict and that I needed help. And they said to me, "Well, you're our first drug addict. We don't know quite what to do with you." But they also said, "We want you to keep coming back." And I heard that loud and clear. That's not what I expected. I expected them to tell me not to come back, but they said, "Keep coming back." And then they said this. They said, "You might want to go to AA." And I said, "Is that like a car club?" They said, "No, that's AAA. You need AA, Alcoholics Anonymous." So I went. Mary also talked to a nurse at our church, and she said that Mac might need to go to a rehab. And she said it would be good for me to go and talk to the head guy at the rehab. And I said, "Mary, look, I don't need that. I'm not crazy. I don't need to go to a rehab. I've turned my life over to God. What more do you want?" Well, we went the next morning to talk to that guy. And after hearing him, I looked at Mary and I said, "Well, I'll stay, but I got to go home and I got to get my stuff."
That's okay, your stuff's in the trunk.
Codependent, no more. Our life became a whirlwind after that. We were going to meetings and Bible studies every day. Things were getting better one step at a time, one day at a time, and my desire to live had now become a reality that I could claim. I had family that loved me, and they were pointing me to the love of my Savior, Jesus Christ. That's when I made choice 3. I knew I had to let go and make a commitment, so I asked Jesus to please be the Lord of my life. And shortly thereafter, I was baptized, seriously, for the first time in my life, wanting all the promises that only Jesus could now fulfill in my life. I was told that I would need a sponsor, someone who could help me set the pace for my life, someone who I could talk to see if my thinking was on the right track or not. how could I ever find a person like this? People who cared about me assured me that if I started going to these meetings, I would find someone to help me, someone that I wanted what my life to look like theirs. And guess what? I found that guy, and he gave me a good, orderly direction for my life. You know, we were going to 90 meetings in 90 days. That's what he told me to do. Well, I was an overachiever, so I think I went to something like 150 meetings in 90 days because I wanted this more than anything in my life. And I found that good, godly man who helped the Holy Spirit take up residence in my mind by requiring me to have Bible verses memorized every week. And you know what? His love for me and his direction still goes on today. He's in his 90s now. He's been my sponsor for the last 35 years. He's not an ex-Marine, he is still a Marine.
Working the steps myself, I came to Choice 5, and I voluntarily began to submit to every change God wanted to make in my life. I stepped out of wanting to be in control of everything and humbly asked him to remove the character defects that were keeping me from a close relationship with him. When I removed myself from the throne and let God take his rightful place, amazing things began happening in our lives. For instance, the lawyer who handled our adoption would never tell us our son's name until he, the lawyer, found out he had terminal cancer. He felt like before he died he needed to tell us our son's name, which turned out to be Heath Arthur. You know, there was no Facebook, no social media back then to find out things. The only other people who knew about our son was my dad, my brother John, and his wife Chris. 1 month later, after Mac yielded to God, God gave us a surprise gift. Our church youth group was going to a youth rally 5 hours away, and Chris was one of the chaperones, where there were going to be over 1,000 kids in attendance. They were assigning groups to stay in homes, and by the time they got to Chris's group, they had run out of homes. So they were asked if they would mind staying in a town close by. As the suitcases were being loaded in the car of a very friendly couple, Chris asked if they had any children. When the woman said they had a son named Heath, a funny feeling came over her, so she asked his age. Heath's mother said he was 12, so she went one step further and asked, "When is his birthday?" Heath's mother said August 17th, 1975, the date Heath, our son, was born. At 2 o'clock a.m., our phone rang. Chris whispered, "You'll never imagine where I'm at right now." And I said, half asleep, "Where?" She replied, "Heath's bed." Well, there's a family at our church that has the last name Heath, so I questioned her, "What are you doing in Mr. Heath's bed?" She exclaimed, No, Heath, your son." Mac and I laughed and we cried. We were in shock and thanked God for all night for how good God is as we were working our recovery process, making amends and righting wrongs we'd done in our lives. We feel God gave us this gift at that time in our lives to reassure us our son was loved and cared for in a Christian home. Choice 6 is about repairing relationships. After finding out where our son lived, we knew that the good work we had begun doing in our lives couldn't stop. We kept praying one day we would meet our son. And because of the work we had been doing in our lives and the transformation that God was making, we would be someone he would want to meet. We began making amends to the people we had harmed and offering forgiveness to those who hurt us. We were doing our best to restore relationships, and because of this, we believe God led us to the next part of his plan. So after waiting 7 more years, we got the call we always hoped we would get. When Heath was about to turn 19, his parents contacted us that he would like to meet us on his birthday. And my stomach flip-flops just recalling that day. A big, long Lincoln Continental came rolling down our driveway. A tall young man stepped out of the car who looked like us and walked just like Mac. My dad was in charge of videoing the momentous occasion, but as we sat down later to view it, the whole first part of the reunion video was showing the ground. My dad was so excited he forgot he was holding the camera.
That's when we made Choice 7. where we reserve a daily time with God for self-examination, Bible reading, and prayer in order to know God and His will for our life and to gain the power to follow His will. I was coming to understand more and more the part of God's will for my life was going to be to help others. It was in this choice that I came to see that even though I couldn't see moment by moment what God was up to, God was at work on the big picture of my life, and it was the little steps that helped shape the big changes of my life. So I came to understand that God was much more concerned about my availability than my abilities to say or do all the things right. So if someone needed help and I could help, I was there. Sam, who had been a pastor for 40 years, tried to commit suicide. The Pharisees in the church had finally gotten to him, and the only way he could get through what they were doing to him was by doing something he said he would never do, and that was take a drink. That drink turned into a bottle every Monday morning. He'd been drinking for 10 years, and nobody knew except his wife. Finally, he couldn't take the hypocrisy of his own life anymore. That's when the suicide attempt happened. So along with that Monday morning bottle, he took a handful of pills to end it all. At that point, he was moved from pastor to one of those people. And if you're one of those people, I get the call. So I went to visit him in the ICU, and even though he was unconscious, I prayed over him, and I told him, Sam, don't you dare give up. God still has a plan for you. I know He does. And over the next few weeks, I was able to share with him about the hope that God still had for him and that he could be a big part of God's plan still. Well, Sam, in his early 70s, became a part of our Celebrate Recovery ministry. He was at one of our small groups one night, and he shared with me, he said, hey, I got to tell you something, Mac. I said, what is it, Sam? He said, I met your son's parents at church on Sunday. I said, Sam, everybody has. They go to church here now. He said, no, you don't understand. You see, 40 years ago, when I first became a pastor, I performed their wedding ceremony. That's right, before our son was ever conceived, God had a plan to use Sam to marry the couple that would later adopt our son, and then later allow me to be instrumental in giving Sam the hope that his relationship could not only be restored, but God would continue to use him. So, I don't know where you're at today or what you're going through, but I would tell you this, hang on. God always sees the big picture. He's always right on time. He's either coming back or He's coming through. Never let go of hope.
Before recovery, I thought it was my job to make sure Max stayed straight, not realizing he needed to make his own choices and suffer the consequences. That was confusing to me at times because I thought being a Christian meant saving others from themselves. I didn't realize I had control issues. Back then, I couldn't forgive myself. I became the queen of people-pleasing. Today, I get my self-worth from Jesus. I've accepted God's forgiveness, and I don't live in regrets anymore. I continue to take a daily personal inventory, making amends when I've wronged somebody, and when I am hurt, I go to them for resolution to forgive as God has forgiven me. Mac and I have been through many fun adventures throughout our 46 years together, but the most exciting adventure of all was when Mac said, I surrender. I'm giving my life to Jesus. I can't do this on my own anymore. I actually thought our adventures were going to slow down and we would live a nice, calm little family life. That's when I realized how vital Choice 8 of Celebrate Recovery was going to be in our lives. We had to stop thinking of just ourselves and start thinking of how we get to help others by sharing what God was helping us overcome. So we yielded ourselves to God so that we could be used to bring the good news that we had found to others. Mac and I both found the freedom we were looking for, freedom to not be who we used to be, and freedom from our hurts, hang-ups, and habits. It was no longer going to be an option to be silent. We had to share our story with others. You see, God had a bigger view for us than just taking care of ourselves. We saw Him start to weave together a plan of helping others all over the world find the hope we had found. In our Bible, Isaiah 59:21 says, As for me, God says, this is my covenant with you and Mac, my spirit that I've placed upon you and the words that I've given you to speak. They're not going to leave your mouths nor the mouths of your children, nor the mouths of your grandchildren. You'll keep repeating these words and won't ever stop. God's orders. And speaking of grandchildren, God has blessed us with 10 amazing grandchildren. Our quiver is overflowing now.
You know, Mary and I believe that we are on the front line of what we believe the ministry of the church should be. Just like it says in Isaiah 61:1, God has sent us to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives in Jesus' name, who have been bound by poor choices and bad decisions, and release from darkness the prisoners of any of life's hurts, hang-ups, or habits. Mary and I started down this journey of healing in 1988, and our Father, who is faithful, planted a seed in our hearts for helping other people find the same healing that we've found through recovery. And God has been helping us grow one step at a time, one day at a time, one person at a time. Does your heart ache? Do you have a dark cloud hanging over your head? Are you carrying a secret? Well, know this. God knows, and he has a plan. Psalms 34:18 says this, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. I would encourage you on your journey to know this. God will not waste any of your hurts. He will wipe away every tear. You know, even though we found recovery, we still have hurts in our lives. No one is exempt from hurt here on this earth. It's what we do with the hurt that matters, remembering that God only uses broken people. You know, in Celebrate Recovery, we get to live out the principles that God laid out in the Beatitudes, giving hope to all those who have hurts, hang-ups, and habits, which last time I looked was everybody I see, starting with me. Thanks for letting us share. Thank you. Thank you, guys. You know, one of my favorite stories in the Bible is about Jesus and the woman at the well. There was a woman who went to a well to draw water in the middle of the day because she couldn't be seen with the other women who went early in the morning when it was cool. So she went in the hottest part of the day. And when she got to the well, Jesus was there. She wasn't expecting that, but he asked her if she would please give him some water. And she basically said, boy, you've really stooped to the bottom of your level. If you want water, you Jew from a Samaritan woman. And then he went on to tell her story about how he knew she'd been married to 5 different men at least. And she was amazed, first of all, that he would talk to her, but then that he knew her story as well. What she realized in that moment was that Jesus had not come there for water. He had come there for her. She went back to town and told everybody, you've got to come see this man who told me everything about my life. And here's the verse that I love the most. It says this, because of her testimony, many came to know Jesus Christ. You see, you've got a testimony too. But there are also some of you in here that have been fighting this battle all by yourself. You're here tonight. You came in with a struggle. You were probably thinking, no, I'll probably just keep it to myself. I'll sit here and I'll leave through those doors just like I do every other time. With everything that I'm battling, I'll leave with it by myself. Well, I'm here to tell you this. You don't have to do that. We're going to sing a song now. And whatever you came in with tonight, whatever you're battling with, you see, this is the no shame, no guilt zone. I love the song we sang earlier that said, Jesus came to turn our shame into his glory. See, God never wastes a hurt. So whatever you came in with tonight, you are in a safe place. There are people here who want to walk with you, not just tonight on Monday night, but all during the week and next Sunday morning too. You see, if you don't have a church to go to on Sunday morning, big church, this is a fantastic place to be on Sunday mornings and then come back on Monday nights. You can get involved in things all through the week with a community of believers that will help you walk this road. So I'm begging you, if you came here tonight and you've got something that you've been fighting all along, don't leave here tonight with that. Leave it up here and be surrounded by this community of believers that wants to help you. If you've got anything tonight, please stand. We're going to sing. If you've got anything tonight that you need to get rid of, please come down front as we sing.